Hi, my name is Mariah Riggs, and today I'm interviewing Tom Perry. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Waterfront. Tom is the cheese sales manager at Shelburne Farms. So today we're going to be talking to Tom about cheese and Shelburne Farms and all those wonderful things that as Vermonters we very much love. So Tom, let's find out a little bit more about you. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Connecticut, in a town called Colchester. I like to say it's halfway between Hartford and the casinos, for those not hyper familiar with Connecticut. It was basically a bedroom community for two different main industries in Connecticut, one being the insurance industry in Hartford and the other being the electric boat down in Groton, which was a defense contractor. So yeah.
Did you ever come to Vermont as a child?
Not as a child so much, but I did live here briefly in the late 90s when I was in my early 20s.
Yep. And you obviously liked it here.
I did. I liked it. I liked it very much, but there was a point when what I was trying to pursue required me to leave and go back down to Connecticut.
Which kind of leads me to my next question. I always wonder, besides absolutely adoring cheese, which I think every Vermonter could probably attest to, how do you get into cheese?
I found the best way to get into cheese is to get into cheese by accident. The majority of people, I think, that were getting into cheese, especially in the early 2000s when I started my path in the cheese industry, was a lot of people with humanities degrees that were looking for work during the summer, and they thought that it would just be a temporary thing, but they found all these connections to what they were studying or what they really enjoyed, whether it be history or agriculture or a lot of religion majors in cheese making and the cheese world as well.
So if you want to get into cheese making, a theology degree might be a great idea.
Exactly. But honestly, we have these things that we call aha moments where you have this encounter with a piece of cheese, and it just changes, it upends your perspective of what you think cheese is. And for me, that cheese was actually a Vermont cheese. It was Windermere, made by Jasper Hill, and still made by Jasper Hill. It's their seasonal washed rind, raw cow's milk cheese. That's what we call a spoonable cheese, where you slice the top off and you're able to just spoon it out.
It's particularly delicious if you have not tried the Windermere cheese. I recommend it.
Yep. And the season is just ending now, so be sure to look out for it next holiday season.
Yep.
Yeah.
Only during the holidays.
Yes. Well, into early spring as well.
So when did you first, because I know you were on the East Coast, where did you first encounter your first cheese job?
I was in Boston, and I worked at Formaggio Kitchen, which is just on the outskirts of Harvard Square. It was and is one of the probably more renowned cheese shops in the world. Wow. And I was lucky enough to stumble in there and get a job as I was just completing culinary school. And they hired me as their catering manager, and I didn't really have a lot of knowledge about cheese, but just being surrounded by literally hundreds of different varieties of cheese gave me the experience that would allow me to, delve deper into it.
And did you instinctively all of a sudden just have a love of cheese?
No. I had a lot more questions than love. And it's not, and maybe I had questions because I loved it or because I liked it so much. And it was like, they're all made out of the same things. How come there's 250 different kinds of cheeses here? And how come this one is like similar to this one, but it's made in a completely different part of the world? So it really sparked a curiosity that I vowed to.
And I've heard from people in the cheese industry that once you kind of go down the primrose path into cheese, it just leads you and it just keeps going.
Yeah, it's more of a rabbit hole than a primrose path. But you know, you're definitely committed to. Some folks are definitely committed to a deeper understanding and delving into that.
So after you were in Boston, you did transition before Shelburne Farms and increase your knowledge of cheese over the years.
That is correct. As I said, I was very fortunate to be getting into the cheese industry at the beginning of what we would consider the American cheese renaissance, which began in the mid to late aughts, as we call them. And, you know, cheesemakers like Jasper Hill and, you know, Consider Bardwell or Vermont Creamery were really beginning to take a more prominent role in the American cheese scene. And I was working at a place in Providence called Farmstead, where their focus was on American-made cheeses. Wow. And at the time, you know, there were no large-scale distributors for this. It was still kind of a shaky proposition, economically speaking. And in order to place orders for these places, you had to call them directly. And that was a wonderful way to build relationships with these.
So there really was like a community. You know, there wasn't like a distribution network. It really was store to farmer.
Right. I mean, I don't want to say it was underground, but like it was almost like, you know, you had to seek it out.
That's so cool, though.
Yeah.
That kind of makes it cool.
Yeah.
You know, you got to love that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, and then you still hadn't quite gotten to Vermont yet.
Correct.
From Providence, you went to
Cato Corner Farm, which is in my hometown of Colchester, Connecticut. They are, in their own right, an exceptional farmstead cheese producer. And that was one of the bigger aha moments. Was I was working at Formaggio Kitchen and I saw this wedge of cheese and it said Colchester, Connecticut. I was like, I had no idea that this cheese was being made in my hometown, literally about 2 miles from where I grew up. By a family I knew growing up. So that was very revelatory for me as well.
That is interesting.
And I went there because I wanted to learn or have a better understanding of how to make cheese. Because I was like, you know, I'd been eating a lot of domestic cheese and I was like, I feel like I could do a pretty good job at this if I really wanted to. But what it did is it really made me realize that I'm much better at selling cheese than making cheese.
Yes, but you appreciate it more because you're part of the process, right? I do.
And like, you know, I know all the labor and love and sweat and tears that go into like each piece of cheese that's made, you know, and like, it's a very visceral feeling when I see cheese that is wasted.
Well, it gives you more of a commitment to sell it.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
Everybody does better selling what they love.
And get it into the hands of people that want it or need it.
So for viewers who don't know what the cheese industry is like, I know we've had a couple of conversations already about that, but what would you say to people watching this? What is the cheese industry like now after what you were discussing as the Renaissance in American cheese? What is it like now in America?
Well, I guess it all depends on what side of the industry you're in. You know, I definitely, you know, at Shelburne Farms in particular, I mean, we straddle the line of artisan and commodity. You know, we're a block cheddar maker for the most part, so we're producing it 40-pound blocks, and you know, we're cutting it into a variety of sizes for retail sale, and you know, but we're one of the few that will find their way into a small specialty shop's cheese counter where they're cutting it by hand off the block, as you would. And there are other sides where, you know, they're making a cheese that has artisan qualities, but it's made on an industrial scale, making literally like thousands or tens of thousands of pounds of cheese a day. And getting it out for mass production and mass consumption. So I mean, there's all these strata, and I feel like we find a way to be in the middle, and we also, you know, just add our own unique spin, being Shelburne Farms.
And it's such a high quality product.
Right.
As all the cheese eaters in Vermont who pretty much live on cheddar cheese know, Shelburne Farms is the most delectable.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, well,
I mean, we have.
I might be biased, but that's a real
We have a
thing.
lot of wonderful, cheese making peers and that make cheddar
Yep.
throughout the state.
Of course.
Cabot and Grafton among them, and we definitely appreciate what they do and what they do in support of the various farming communities and their local communities throughout the state.
So I guess also kind of coming back to this, and I kind of know the question to this, but maybe some of our viewers aren't aware of this. What is Vermont's reputation in sort of the cheese community?
Very high, particularly nationally. It's similar to the way that our beer industry is perceived here. It's a small handmade artisan industry. That's definitely the impression, and for the most part, it's a very real perception and way to describe what many are trying to achieve with their farms and their dairy animals or the milk that's being produced here in state. And internationally, we're starting to get more accolades. There's been a lot of encouragement by the department, USDA, to enter contests internationally, and a number of our peers here in the state have done very well.
Which is big because, I mean, cheese traditionally is a European, especially artisan cheese, comes from Europe.
Yeah, or at least that's the impression.
Well, that is the impression.
Right.
But again, when you were talking about the Renaissance, you can see how in America we've started to embrace it here.
Absolutely.
And move away from, I hate to say this, but like orange cheese and Velveeta products.
Right. Well, definitely more real food. But I think that's been, a conscious effort by many people over the past decade or more, and I feel like that the roots of that can be found here in Vermont.
Yep, and at a place like Shelburne Farms.
Absolutely.
Completely. So this kind of, we almost answered it, but what brought you to Vermont?
Shelburne Farms. As we kind of touched on, I was in retail for probably about 10 years. And I was looking to take my next steps in the career. I hadn't embraced the cheesemaker life, but I really like selling it. And Shelburne Farms in 2017 had an opening for their cheese sales manager position, and I applied for it, and here we are.
All right.
Yeah.
That's great. So you've been at Shelburne Farms for how long now?
5 years now.
Wow, so that's significant.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. And so I'm sure most of our viewers probably know this, but for some of you who aren't aware, how would you describe what is Shelburne Farms to the person who's never heard of Shelburne Farms? How would you describe it?
Shelburne Farms, I feel, is a many-faceted organization and has different meanings to different people. For me, obviously, the cheese is at the front and center of my association with the farm. Shelburne Farms was literally the first cheesemaker that I visited back in 2009, and they gave me a wonderful hands-on experience. Literally, it was when we were still allowing people to go into the make room and flip the curds of cheddar and stack them on top of each other. We do not allow that anymore. I'll just get that out of the way now.
So no private tours, if anybody's wondering. That's not going to happen.
Yep.
Yes.
But Shelburne Farms is also a major sustainability education campus. We have people that come from all over the world, literally, to engage with our education team that would, so that they can bring the tenets of sustainable, community building back to their own communities.
Yep. And so, I mean, also another thing that always comes to mind to me when I think of Shelburne Farms is stewardship and the fact that they're about land use and about cultivating the land and place. So, again, people who don't know Shelburne Farms, what is it like?
Because
it is a very unique place.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is it's magical. Because if you've never been to the farm, you go up this winding dirt road, and all of a sudden this large building just dominates your your line of sight, and that's the barn, and that's where I work. But it looks like something out of Harry Potter. A lot of my friends call it the Hogwarts of cheese.
I love that.
And like that's just the beginning. It continues and ambles on for another 1,400 acres, and I think it's gotten to the point where it's a very special place for a lot of Vermonters, and we want to be able to share that special place in perpetuity.
And it spearheaded a lot of sort of the farm-to-table, sustainable farming movement that came out of the 80s and 90s in Vermont.
Yep, and we're continuing to do that. Part of some of the legislation that got passed late last year or in 2021, about bringing farm to school education. That was introduced by Senator Leahy. That is definitely a core program that we embark on at Shelburne Farms, and the commitment that we have to working with educators, not only our own education team, but educators throughout the state, and how they can interest their students in farming and agriculture, especially here in state.
Because that's a huge part of Shelburne Farms is their community outreach and their engagement with education and educating kids of Vermont. I know my kids went to many field trips there.
Yep.
And got to watch the chickens. There's a whole kid farm component.
Yep.
There's the education barn where they can go play and learn about the farm.
Yep.
If you have a child under the age of 7, it's probably the greatest place in Vermont you can take your child. And I don't say that lightly. It's quite amazing. We spent many a day there with the small ones. So how did Shelburne Farms, because I know they were opening the farm, and how did they start making cheese?
So this year, 2022, is celebrating the 50th anniversary of the nonprofit. So the educational nonprofit that is part of the core of our mission. But the way that we were funding that nonprofit back in the 70s was through the utilization of the land and the cows, the brown Swiss cows that were already on the property, utilizing the sugar bush to make maple syrup. But in regards to how we were, kind of utilizing the milk, was we were selling raw milk back in the late 70s. And much like today, fluid milk as, an economic driver isn't the most profitable industry.
No, the rate of return on just a milk product is negligible.
Exactly. So you're dealing with a very perishable item that can go sour, literally, in a matter of weeks. So what we decided to do was we decided to contact some of our peers, Grafton and Cabot in particular, Crowley as well. And we also reached out to some of our friends in England to learn how to make cheddar, a value-added product.
Yep.
And what that does is it extends the life of a very short shelf life product into one with greater potential.
Yeah, it's a preservative. It's been used for centuries to preserve dairy products.
Exactly.
So also another interesting and fascinating thing is why brown Swiss cows?
I'm not 100% sure why brown Swiss cows initially, but I can tell you now the reason that we've committed and stayed committed to the brown Swiss cows is, they're what we would consider a double threat cow.
A double threat cow.
Double threat cow.
Only in Vermont.
In the sense, well, there are triple threats too. But the double threat means, back in the day, prior to mechanized, agricultural implements, they were great for drafting purposes and plowing.
Oh, wow.
And they're also exceptional for dairy. And their Swiss roots in the Alps of Switzerland make them uniquely suited to the Vermont climate between our cold weathers, some of our more rocky terrain, and they're a wonderfly gentle and
well, they're adorable.
yeah, they're very well behaved and curious cows. They're not too skittish and they're not too much of a bully.
Now, because somebody I thought at one point told me it had something to do with their fat content.
Well, so yes, so that definitely does play a role. I believe that when they did initially bring the brown Swiss onto the farm back in the 50s, it was because of their elevated levels of butterfat. And you're able to get a higher price per hundredweight because of the different elevated components in the milk.
Wow, that's so interesting. So yeah, no, well, I've always wondered about the brown Swisses at Shelburne Farms. So thank you.
And now you know.
Now I know. So while we're talking about it, let's find out what is the process at Shelburne Farms for making cheese.
For making cheese. So at Shelburne Farms, all we're making is cheddar. As I like to say, we make cheddar, cheddar, and cheddar.
Which you can never have enough of.
Which you can never have enough of. And for us, that entails the milking team starting very early in the morning, typically around 4:30, and they'll do the morning's milking. And that milk will
How much milk does a cow produce daily?
So depends on the time of year. Depends on where they are in their lactation cycle. Obviously, after they've just given birth, they're going to be producing more. But I won't get into the whole details. But about 50 pounds of milk a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So the one cow really could feed a family for. Wow, 50 pounds of milk? That's significant. Okay.
So what the dairy team is going to do the milking early in the morning. That milk is going to be combined with the milk from the previous evening. And a member of our cheese making team is going to go down to the dairy, get that milk, bring it up in a haul truck, and there's about, depending on the time of year, anywhere from about 4,000 to 6,000 pounds of milk in that haul truck. And we're going to snake it through a hole in the wall at the farm, and we're going to pump it into our cheese making vat. There's a pump that the hose gets connected to, and then it goes into the vat. From there, they're going to start warming up the milk gradually. When the milk reaches an acceptable temperature, they're going to add in cultures, which are a critical part of the cheese making process, because what it will do is it will begin to acidify the milk. And the reason we're acidifying the milk is because we're going to be adding an enzyme known as rennet. For us, we're using traditional animal rennet, so that means it's derived from the fourth stomach of a cow, and that will help coagulate the milk, and basically it will turn the milk from its pure liquid state into kind of this like milk jello or milk pudding kind of state, which is really fascinating to cheese to see, because it was one thing one minute and it's almost like alchemy.
Wow, and it happens quickly.
It happens relatively quickly within the space of about half an hour, 45 minutes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's 5,000 pounds of milk that have just magically transformed. Well, not magically, science.
Yes.
And
thank you, science.
Yes, and so once it's reached its kind of ideal firmness, they'll run our cheese wires up and down the length of the vat, and they'll cut it into small pieces of curd. And then they'll put some paddle attachments in, and they'll stir this curd and whey mixture, and the curd will be bouncing all around the vat, and the whole time it's continuing to acidify. Once it reaches the target level of acidification, we'll drain the whey out. We'll form these banks of curd that we call the pack, and we'll then cut the curd into bread-sized loaves of dairy matter, and we'll start stacking them on top of each other, and that's the cheddaring process.
That's it?
Wait, there's more. Okay. There's more. Okay. So eventually they're going to start off like basically like loaves of bread size things of curd, but as gravity and moisture is kind of expelled from the weight of the other loaves of curd, it goes from looking like a loaf of bread to like a long like whole slab of like pork belly or bacon, if you've ever seen that.
Wow.
So it goes from being like this big to like this long.
So
and
coagulates.
Like this tall.
Coagulates.
And this like will stretch out the curd without like stressing it out, so you get some really great textures and stuff. And then we're going to throw it into a mill a milling machine, and that will cut it into these finger-sized curds that will then add salt into. And we'll do that in 3 doses, because if we did it all at once, all the salt would get washed away with the way that it's being expelled, because like the salt is like contracting.
So it has to be consistently salted on some level.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we'll put it into these 40-pound metal forms. We'll press it overnight, and the next morning we'll bag it up and age it anywhere from 6 months to 3 years.
And they do that daily?
Do that daily.
Wow, so when do you produce so much cheese?
Yeah, and
that's a lot of, that's every day.
Every day. I mean, there are some times during the holiday period where we take breaks so that we can focus on our mail order business that
wow.
a lot of folks locally support. So that's wonderful.
Well, we need to sell the cheese too, right?
Exactly.
That's very important.
We do.
Speaking of which, where can Shelburne Farms cheese be found?
It can be found lots of places. First and foremost, you can find it at our Welcome Center store, which is at the entrance to the farm, right off of Harbor and Bay Road in Shelburne. We're available at many locations here in the Burlington area. City Market Co-op, Wine and Cheese Traders, Healthy Living, Market 32 over on Shelburne Road, just to name a few. Daedalus, I don't want to leave anybody out, but we've got a pretty good distribution network. Definitely in Montpelier, Middlebury, Brattleboro, White River Junction, and then it goes beyond there. Throughout New England and Boston, New York, all the way out to San Francisco.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, what types of cheese do we end up producing? Because I know there are different types of cheese at Shelburne Farms.
Right.
So what are your different types of cheese?
So it's technically only one cheese. We're only making cheddar.
I know, but the aging.
Right. No.
Okay, you're right. He's very right.
And we technically make only one
I am not
style
the cheesemonger.
of cheese. I know. That's literally my job. We only make one type of cheese. That's why I said we make cheddar, and cheddar. But depending on how the cheese went, it can age anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. So we've got a 6-month variety, a 1-year variety, a 2-year variety, which is probably what most people are familiar with. The 3-year, which is the unicorn, and then we've got a couple of other varieties, the smoked and the cloth bound, where we work with partner cheese making organizations. Grafton does the smoking for us, and Jasper Hill does the cloth bound aging for us. And then we have Tractor, which is our strongest cheese, and it helps keep the engines running.
Yes, for most Vermonters, actually.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. So those are all the different, and so, for example, if somebody was looking to get like a sample and send it to somebody across the country, they can go to shelburnefarms.com.
ShelburneFarms.org.
Thank you.
Thank you. As a
So
nonprofit.
if you want to buy some cheese, you want to look for gift boxes, you want to find out more information, make sure you take a look at shelburnefarms.org. You'll find out all the information there, and you can actually shop there, correct?
Yep. And there's a little tab that says shop, and it'll direct you either to the Welcome Center for pickup or our online store that can ship it nationwide.
It's also a great thing too, if you have friends and family who have come up here and visited you, gone to Shelburne Farms, tried the cheese, and wonder how they can get it. They can just go online and they ship worldwide. Is that correct?
Nationwide.
Nationwide. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I use them for packages to family and friends every holiday season. So.
Which it is.
Which is great. So what's going on at the farm this season?
So this year we're reopening with a couple of caveats. The inn is reopened after a 2-year hiatus. We're starting to have more farm events, particularly outdoor-based activities, so nature walks. We're having a couple of cheese-based activities. Our head cheesemaker, Helen, is going to be doing a artisan cheese and tasting at the end of the month here in May. So
if you want to do an artisan cheese tasting, please go visit Helen.
Yep.
You can probably find the information at shelburnefarms.org.
On our calendar. Yep. And there will be a way for you to sign up as well.
That's great.
Yep.
Now, are you doing any of the farm-to-table food things this summer, or is that not happening?
So we're going to continue to sell the produce from our market garden through the Welcome Center. As I said, the inn has reopened, but currently staffing is only allowing us to feed the folks that are staying at the inn,
Okay.
but we are definitely utilizing what we're growing and what we're producing on the farm for that farm to table activity.
And there's also O Bread Bakery. Is that still
Yep,
there too?
that is there as well.
So also, I don't know if some of you don't know this, but at Shelburne Farms, they also have a delightfully, insanely good bakery called O Bread, right next to the cheese making operation, and bread and cheese
Goes well
inherently
together.
go well together. So before we step out of this conversation, Tom, what might we not know about you that you would like to share?
So in addition to my duties at the farm, you know, I'm a pretty active participant in a lot of aspects of the industry, but locally I also teach an online artisan cheese sensory evaluation course through UVM.
Wow.
And we just wrapped up our April session, and we're going to be having another session that begins in September. So if there's anybody that would like to learn more about how to appreciate the cheeses you encounter, whether it be Shelburne Farms or whatever you're finding on the counter or on the store shelves, we'd be happy to give you guidance so that you can better prepare your palate.
So somebody could find out about that and learn more about how to become more of a cheesemonger and appreciate cheese.
Become a better cheese enthusiast.
Oh, good. Well, we need more. The one thing we really need in Vermont is more cheese enthusiasts, because everybody in born is a cheese enthusiast from the day they're born. It's a real thing. And Tom, I have to thank you for producing such amazing and wonderful cheese.
Well,
And
it's really
sharing
the
it with
cheese
all of
team
us.
that-
I
that
know.
produces
Thank you
it.
to the Shelburne Farms cheese team.
Yes.
And thank you to Tom for selling us all that lovely cheese. Again, if you want more information about all the wonderful work about Shelburne Farms, the organization, the different programs they have and events that they have going on over the summer, please make sure to go to shelburnefarms.org, where you will find all that pertinent information. That pretty much sums it up, Tom.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was lovely.
Have a lovely time this summer. You're in my favorite place all summer. I'm kind of jealous.
Thank you.
And thank you all so much for tuning in this month, and we'll see you back. Take care.